Elena Morrison didn't know that the man watching her from across the library was the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. She didn't know that he had been searching for her for 3 long years, following every lead, chasing every whisper of her existence. And she certainly didn't know that the careful, quiet life she had built in this mountain town was about to shatter the moment he spoke her real name. The late afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the Millbrook Public Library, casting golden rectangles across the worn wooden floors. Elena moved between the stacks with practiced efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, her movements careful and deliberate. Everything about her life was careful and deliberate now. It had to be. She couldn't remember the time before 3 years ago. The doctors called it selective amnesia brought on by severe trauma. All she knew was that she had woken up in a Denver hospital with no memory of who she was or how she'd gotten there. The only clues were the clothes she'd been wearing, expensive, blood-stained, and completely foreign to the woman she discovered herself to be. The social worker had been kind. Elena Morrison, she'd said, reading from the false identification they'd found in her purse. 24 years old, no family anyone could locate, no missing person reports that matched her description, a mystery wrapped in silence. So Eleanor had chosen to stay a mystery. She'd taken the new identity and run with it, settling in this quiet Colorado town where nobody asked too many questions, and the librarian position came with a small apartment above the building. Safe, anonymous, exactly what every instinct in her body demanded. She was reshelving the last of the returned books when she felt it, that prickle of awareness that meant someone was watching her. Elena had learned to trust those instincts. They had kept her alive during the nightmares that still plagued her sleep, the ones filled with running through dark forests and the sound of something hunting her. Turning slowly, she scanned the library. Mrs. Patterson had left an hour ago with her weekly stack of romance novels. The teenage boy who came in to use the computers was gone. The library should have been empty, but he was there, standing in the shadows between the history and biography sections, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. Tall. That was her first coherent thought. He had to be 6'4" at least, with broad shoulders that filled out his expensive charcoal suit perfectly. His dark hair was pushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes the colour of liquid amber that seemed to glow in the dim light. Those eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. "We're closed," Elena managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Her hand moved instinctively toward the panic button under the circulation desk. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to come back tomorrow." He stepped forward, and the shadows seemed to part around him. There was something predatory in the way he moved, like a wolf stalking through the forest. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Hello, Elena." His voice was deep, rough velvet that sent shivers down her spine. "Or do you prefer nightshade now?" The world tilted. Elena gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Elena Morrison." "Is it?" He took another step closer, and she could smell something wild on him, pine and mountain air, and something indefinably male. "Because 3 years ago you were Eleanor Nightshade, and you belonged to me." "I don't know any kings." Eleanor backed away, her heart racing. The words tumbled out in a rush. "I don't know you. I've never seen you before in my life." But even as she said it, something deep in her chest pulled tight, like a golden thread stretched taut, vibrating with recognition her mind couldn't access. Heat bloomed in her sternum, spreading outward until her hands shook. He stepped forward, closing the distance she'd tried to create. Up close, she could see flecks of gold in those impossible amber eyes, could see the way his jaw tightened with something that looked like pain. "You know me," he said quietly, and his voice held a certainty that terrified her. "You just don't remember." Eleanor shook her head frantically. "No, no, I would remember someone like you. I would remember—" "What happened to you wasn't your fault." He raised one hand, and she flinched instinctively. He froze, his eyes going wide with something that might have been rage, but his voice stayed gentle. "Who taught you to do that?" "I don't know what you mean." But she did. She remembered the hospital, the way she'd cowered from every male doctor, every orderly. The social worker had said it was probably related to her trauma. "My name is Kieran Blackthorne," he continued, his hand dropping slowly to his side. 3 years ago, you disappeared. I've been looking for you ever since." Elena's legs gave out. She sank into the chair behind the circulation desk, her mind reeling. Kieran Blackthorne. Even in her isolated mountain town she'd heard that name. He was practically royalty among the supernatural community, the Alpha King who controlled more territory than any other pack leader in North America. And he was claiming he knew her. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I'm nobody. I'm just a librarian. I don't know anything about your world." "You were everything to me." The words were so quiet she almost missed them. "You still are." Something in her chest clenched. A flash of memory tried to surface. Strong arms around her, the scent of pine and safety, a voice whispering promises against her hair. But when she grasped for it, it slipped away like smoke. "I can't." Elena stood abruptly, backing toward the door. "Whatever you think you know about me, you're wrong. I'm not who you're looking for." "Eleanor." The way he said her name made her stop, like a prayer, like a promise. "I know you're scared. I know someone hurt you badly enough that your mind locked it all away, but running won't keep you safe forever. They know you're alive now." Terror, cold and sharp, shot through her. "They?" But Kieran was already reaching into his jacket, pulling out a simple business card. He set it on the desk between them, his movements careful and non-threatening. "When you're ready," he said, "call me. I'll wait as long as it takes." "And if I'm never ready?" Something fierce flashed in his amber eyes. "Then I'll wait forever." He turned to go, but paused at the door. "Elena, the nightmares you have about running through the forest, you weren't running from me. You were running to me. Remember that." Then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of pine and the impossible warmth still spreading through Elena's chest. She stared at the business card for a long time, her hands trembling. Kieran Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and underneath, in strong, confident handwriting, "You are safe now, you are home." Elena sank back into her chair, her careful, quiet world crumbling around her. Because despite everything logical in her mind, despite 3 years of building a life as Elena Morrison, something deep inside her was whispering that the stranger was right. She did know him. She just had to remember how. Elena stared at the business card until the letters blurred together. Kieran Blackthorne. The name echoed in her mind like a half-remembered song, familiar and foreign all at once. She locked the library with shaking hands and climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment. The small space felt different now, as if Kieran's presence had somehow shifted the air itself. Elena set the card on her kitchen counter and reached for her laptop with the desperate need to prove him wrong. "Kieran Blackthorne," she typed, her fingers trembling over the keys. The search results made her blood run cold. Alpha King of the Northern Territories, owner of Blackthorne Industries, one of the largest private security firms in North America. Net worth in the billions. And photo after photo of the man who had stood in her library less than an hour ago. In the pictures he looked untouchable, dangerous, standing beside world leaders and celebrities, his amber eyes cold and calculating. This was not a man who spent his time hunting down lost librarians, unless she really had been something more than a librarian. Elena slammed the laptop shut and pressed her palms against her eyes. The familiar ache was starting behind her temples, the one that always came when she tried too hard to remember. The doctors had warned her about pushing. Sometimes memories had to surface naturally or risk damaging her mind further. But as she lay down that night, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about the way Kieran had said her name, like it meant everything. The dreams came swift and violent. She was running through a dark forest, branches tearing at a dress that sparkled like starlight. Her bare feet bled on the forest floor, but she couldn't stop. Behind her, something snarled, something hunted. Terror consumed her, but underneath it was something worse, the crushing knowledge that she was running away from safety, not toward it. Then the scene shifted. A grand ballroom filled with impossible beauty, chandeliers that caught the light like captured stars. She was dancing with someone tall and strong, his hands warm against her back. She felt precious, cherished, like she belonged somewhere for the first time in her life. "Soon," a deep voice murmured against her ear, "soon you'll be mine forever." Elena woke with tears on her cheeks and the taste of champagne on her tongue. She called in sick to work. The dreams had left her shaken, and the fragments felt too real to ignore. Elena spent the morning pacing her small apartment, Kieran's business card burning a hole in her vision every time she passed the kitchen counter. At noon he appeared. Elena was making tea when she spotted him through her window, standing across the street with 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag from the bakery down the block. He wasn't hiding, wasn't lurking, just waiting. Something in her chest pulled tight, that golden thread sensation, warm and insistent. Before she could talk herself out of it, Elena found herself downstairs, unlocking the library's front door. "You came back," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "I told you I'd wait." Kieran held out one of the coffee cups. "You take it with cream and 2 sugars." Elena stared at him. She did take her coffee with cream and 2 sugars. Had since she could remember. Lucky guess. "Elena." His voice was gentle, patient. "When will you stop fighting what you feel?" She took the coffee with hands that barely shook. The warmth spread through her fingers, and for a moment she could almost pretend this was normal. That handsome, powerful man brought her coffee every day. "Tell me," Elena said, settling into one of the reading chairs. "Tell me who you think I was." Kieran sat across from her, his massive frame somehow fitting gracefully into the small space. "Elena Nightshade, daughter of the Crescent Moon Pack. Though you lost your parents when you were 16, you came to my territory looking for a place to belong." The words hit her like physical blows. Eleanor's hand flew to her chest, where something ached with recognition. "I don't remember any of that." "Your eyes," Kieran continued, his gaze never leaving her face, "used to change colour when you were emotional, green when you were happy, storm grey when you were angry, silver when you cried." Eleanor touched her face unconsciously. Her eyes were brown now, had always been brown as far as she knew. That's impossible. "Many things about our world seem impossible to humans," Kieran said quietly. "But you weren't human, Eleanor. You were one of us." The coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers. Kieran caught it before it could hit the floor, his reflexes impossibly quick. "A werewolf," Elena breathed, "the most beautiful one I'd ever seen." His voice roughened. "You had this laugh that could light up an entire room, and when you shifted, your wolf was silver like moonlight on water." Memory fragments crashed over her like a tide. The sensation of muscles changing, bones reshaping, the glory of running on 4 legs through mountain forests, the pack bonds that had felt like family, like home, like everything she'd ever wanted. And underneath it all, the bone-deep certainty that she belonged to the man sitting across from her. "No." Elena stood abruptly, backing away. "No, this isn't real. People don't just forget they're supernatural creatures." "They do when the trauma is severe enough." Kieran's eyes had gone soft, sympathetic. "Elena, what's the last thing you remember before waking up in that hospital?" She opened her mouth to say she didn't remember anything, but suddenly she did. The ballroom, the beautiful dress, dancing with someone she loved more than her own life. "A party," she whispered. "There was music and dancing, and I was happy, so happy it hurt." "Our engagement party." Kieran stood slowly, like he was approaching a frightened animal. "We were going to announce our mating bond to both our packs. You were wearing my grandmother's sapphire necklace." Elena's hand flew to her throat. In the dream, memory. She could feel the weight of jewels against her skin. "What happened?" The words came out broken, desperate. "Someone tried to kill you!" Kieran's voice went hard, dangerous. "During the party, they nearly succeeded." The room tilted around her. Eleanor gripped the back of the chair for support as more memories surfaced. Screaming, the scent of blood. Someone she trusted standing over her with eyes full of hate. "Who?" "Your cousin, Vivian Nightshade. She wanted to be Lunar Queen, and you were in her way." The name hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She saw a face, beautiful, cruel, twisted with jealousy. Heard a voice hissing poison. "You don't deserve him. You don't deserve anything." "She's the reason I can't remember." It wasn't a question. The attack damaged your mind as well as your body. You were in a coma for 2 weeks. When you woke up, you couldn't remember any of us, couldn't access your wolf. The trauma had locked everything away. Eleanor sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. "And then I disappeared." "You ran." Kieran's voice was carefully controlled. "In the middle of the night, left everything behind. I've been searching for you for 3 years, Elena, following every lead, chasing every rumour. You covered your tracks well." "Because some part of me knew I was in danger." "Yes, and some part of you knew you could trust me to find you when you were ready." Elena looked up at him, this impossibly powerful man who claimed to have spent 3 years hunting for her. "What if I'm never ready? What if I can't remember how to be what you need?" Kieran knelt beside her chair, his amber eyes fierce with something that might have been love. "Then we'll build something new. I don't need you to be who you were before, Elena. I just need you to be you." "But what if—" "The bond doesn't lie," he interrupted gently. "What you're feeling right now, that pull in your chest, that warmth when I'm near, that's real. That's ours. Everything else we can figure out together." Elena stared at him, this stranger who felt like coming home. The golden thread in her chest pulled taut, singing with recognition her mind couldn't access, but her soul remembered. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." Kieran reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and touched her hand. Heat shot up her arm like lightning. "But you don't have to be scared alone anymore." Eleanor looked down at their joined hands and felt something crack open in her chest. Some wall she'd built to keep herself safe, because for the first time in 3 years, safe felt like this man's amber eyes and patient voice promising her that she was found. "Have dinner with me," Kieran said quietly. "Let me tell you stories about the woman you used to be, and maybe you can tell me about the woman you've become." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to keep herself safe in the small, quiet life she'd built. But the golden thread in her chest pulled tight, and she heard herself saying, "Okay." Kieran's smile could have powered the entire town. "Thank you," he said simply, "for trusting me with this much." As Elena watched him leave, promising to pick her up at 7, she touched the place over her heart where the warmth lingered. She was terrified, but for the first time since waking up in that hospital 3 years ago, Elena Nightshade, not Morrison, felt like she might actually be coming home. Elena stood in front of her closet mirror, hands trembling as she smoothed down the simple black dress she'd chosen. It was the nicest thing she owned, though it felt inadequate for dinner with an Alpha King. Everything felt inadequate when she thought about who Kieran claimed she used to be, a werewolf, his intended mate, someone important enough that people tried to kill her. She touched the hollow of her throat, where dream memory insisted sapphires had once rested, and wondered what it felt like to be someone worth loving that fiercely. At exactly 7 o'clock, Kieran knocked. Elena opened the door and forgot how to breathe. He'd traded the expensive suit for dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that clung to his broad shoulders. The casual clothes made him look younger, more approachable, though nothing could diminish the raw power that radiated from him like heat from a fire. "You look beautiful," he said, and the way his amber eyes darkened made Elena believe it might be true. The restaurant he chose was intimate and expensive, the kind of place Elena had never imagined herself eating. Crystal glasses caught candlelight, and the servers moved with practiced discretion. When they approached their table, Eleanor noticed how they bowed their heads slightly to Kieran, how their scents carried the faint musk of fear mixed with respect. "They know what you are," Elena said, as they settled into their seats. "Most supernatural creatures can sense an alpha's dominance." Kieran's voice was matter-of-fact. "But they're not afraid of me because I'm dangerous. They're careful because I'm protective of what's mine." Elena's heart stuttered. "And what's yours?" "You," he said simply. "You've always been mine, Elena, even when you couldn't remember." She should have felt trapped by the certainty in his voice. Instead, something in her chest unfurled like a flower reaching for sunlight. The golden thread pulled taut, singing with recognition. "Tell me about us," Elena said quietly. "About who we were before." Kieran leaned back in his chair, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You crashed into my life like a hurricane, literally. You were running from a group of rogues who'd been tracking you through 3 states, and you stumbled into my territory, half dead from exhaustion." Elena tried to picture it, herself as someone brave enough to outrun rogues, desperate enough to seek sanctuary with strangers. "I found you collapsed by the river that runs through my land," Kieran continued. "You were so thin I could count every rib. Your clothes were torn, your feet bloody. But when I approached, you shifted into the most magnificent wolf I'd ever seen and bared your teeth at me." "I attacked you." Elena's eyes widened. "You tried to." His laugh was rich, warm. "You had the heart of a warrior, but you were running on empty. You collapsed again before you could even snap at me properly." Eleanor felt a flutter of something that might have been pride. "What did you do?" "I took you home, fed you, let you sleep for 3 days straight in my guest room." Kieran's eyes grew soft with memory. "When you finally woke up, you were the most suspicious creature I'd ever encountered. You questioned everything, my motives, my territory boundaries, my pack structure. You wouldn't let anyone near you except me." "Why you?" "The bond," Kieran said quietly. "Even then, before we understood what it meant, there was recognition. Your wolf trusted mine, even when your human mind didn't." Eleanor's chest tightened. "When did you know that we were mates?" "The moment I scented you by that river. But you?" His smile turned rueful. "You fought it for months. You'd been hurt so many times, lost so much, that you couldn't believe anything good would last." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Even without her memories, she recognized the truth in them. The careful distance she maintained from everyone in town, the way she never let herself get too comfortable, too settled, always ready to run. "How did you convince me?" "Patience." Kieran reached across the table and touched her hand. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. "I waited. I let you set the pace. I proved every day that I wasn't going anywhere, no matter how hard you tried to push me away." Elena stared down at their joined hands. His was so much larger than hers, scarred from what looked like battles, but his touch was impossibly gentle. "Tell me about the engagement party," she whispered. Kieran's grip tightened almost imperceptibly. "You wore a midnight blue gown that made you look like starlight, my grandmother's sapphires at your throat. You were nervous about the formal announcement, worried the pack wouldn't accept an outsider as their Luna." Memory fragments began to surface, sharper now, the weight of silk against her skin, the way dozens of eyes had tracked her every movement, the overwhelming sensation of belonging somewhere finally, after years of running. "I felt beautiful," Elena said, the words coming from somewhere deep, For the first time in my life, I felt like I deserved to be there. You were radiant, Kieran's voice roughened. You gave a speech about what Pack meant to you, about finding family in the most unexpected places. There wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom. The memory crashed over her like a wave. Standing at Kieran's side, his hand warm and steady at the small of her back, looking out at faces that had become beloved over months of careful trust-building, feeling like she'd finally found where she belonged. Vivian was there, Eleanor whispered, and suddenly she could see her cousin's face clearly, beautiful, cruel, twisted with a jealousy so deep it had festered into hate. She congratulated us, Kieran said carefully, seemed genuinely happy for us. I never suspected. She hugged me. Elena's voice broke as the memory surfaced, sharp and terrible. She pulled me aside during the party, said she wanted to talk privately, said she had a gift for me. Elena's hand flew to her throat. She could feel phantom pain there, sharp and burning. She drugged me, Elena gasped. Something in her perfume. I couldn't think straight. She led me out to the gardens, and there were men waiting. Rogues. She'd hired rogues to kill me. Kieran's eyes flashed gold, his control slipping. Elena, you don't have to. No. Elena gripped his hand like a lifeline. I need to remember. She said I didn't deserve you, that I was nothing, just some pathetic stray you'd taken pity on. She said she'd be a better Luna, a better mate, that once I was gone you'd see reason. The memory unfolded like a nightmare. Vivian's voice, poisonous and sweet, the rogues circling her like vultures, the devastating realization that family could betray you more completely than any stranger. They were supposed to make it look like an accident, Elena continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. A rogue attack, but I fought back harder than they expected. I managed to shift, to run. You made it 3 miles through the forest before they brought you down, Kieran said quietly. By the time my wolves found you, you were nearly dead. The head injuries were severe. Elena touched her temple, remembering the crushing pain, the way her vision had gone dark at the edges. I was in a coma for 2 weeks, she said, and when I woke up, you couldn't remember any of us. The doctors said the trauma had created dissociative barriers. Your mind had locked away everything associated with the attack, which meant everything associated with our world. Elena looked up at him through her tears. I ran because some part of me remembered that staying was dangerous. You ran because you were scared and alone and couldn't trust your own mind. Kieran's voice was fierce with suppressed rage. Vivian stole 3 years from us, Elena. 3 years of your life, of our life together. Where is she now? Gone? Kieran's eyes went cold and deadly. The moment I realized what she'd done, I had her exiled from all Pack territories. She's been declared rogue. No Pack will take her. No Alpha will protect her. Elena felt a savage satisfaction at that. Good. Let Vivian live the same rootless existence she'd forced on Elena. But she knows I'm alive now, Elena said, understanding hitting her like ice water. If you found me, she can too. Let her try. Kieran's voice carried the promise of violence. I won't make the mistake of underestimating family again. Elena stared at him, this powerful, dangerous man who'd spent 3 years hunting for her, who'd waited patiently while she remembered how to trust, who looked at her like she was everything precious in the world. I loved you, she whispered, and it wasn't a question. More than your own life, Kieran confirmed, and I loved you the same way. Past tense? Kieran stood abruptly and moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away her tears. I've never stopped loving you, Elena. Not for a single moment in 3 years. Memory or no memory, human or wolf, Elena Morrison or Elena Nightshade. You're still you. You're still mine. Elena's breath caught. Kieran, I know you're not ready, he said quickly. I know you need time to process everything, but I need you to know what we had before. That was just the beginning. We can build something even stronger now." Elena searched his amber eyes and saw only truth, only patience, only love so fierce it had endured 3 years of absence and uncertainty. "I want to try," she whispered. "I'm terrified, but I want to try." Kieran's smile could have powered the entire restaurant. "That's all I need." When he leaned in to kiss her, Eleanor met him halfway. Their lips touched, and suddenly she was drowning in sensation. The taste of him like coming home, the scent of pine and safety, the overwhelming rightness of his touch. Memory flooded back in a rush. Their first kiss by the river, the way he'd proposed under a full moon, the night they'd marked each other as mates, not just the events, but the feelings, the absolute certainty that she belonged to him as completely as he belonged to her. When they broke apart, Elena was gasping. "I remember," she breathed. "God, Kieran, I remember loving you so much it scared me." "Does it still scare you?" Elena looked at him, her mate, her alpha, her home, and felt the last of her walls crumble. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not enough to run anymore." Kieran's answering smile was radiant. "Then let's go home, love. Let me show you the life we're going to build together." As Eleanor stood and took his offered hand, she felt the golden thread in her chest sing with joy. She was still scared, still processing, still healing. But for the first time in 3 years, Elena Nightshade was ready to stop running and start living again. The journey to Kieran's territory took 4 hours through winding mountain roads that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Elena pressed her face to the passenger window of his sleek SUV, watching pine forests give way to the sprawling valley that had once been her home. "Tell me what you're thinking," Kieran said softly, his voice cutting through her silence. Elena touched the glass, her breath fogging it slightly. "I remember this road, the way the mountains curve around the valley like protective arms. I used to love driving this stretch." "You had a little red convertible," Kieran said, smiling at the memory. "You'd put the top down even in winter and drive these curves like you were racing the wind." Something warm unfurled in Elena's chest. "I was happy here. The happiest I'd ever seen you." Kieran's hand found hers across the centre console. "You will be again." As they descended into the valley, Elena's breath caught. The Blackthorn Pack territory stretched out before them like something from a fairy tale. Rolling green hills dotted with cabins and larger homes, all connected by stone pathways that wound through carefully maintained gardens. At the centre stood the main house, a massive log and stone structure that managed to look both rustic and regal. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered. "It's home," Kieran corrected. "Your home." As they pulled up to the main house, Elena saw figures emerging onto the wide front porch, her heart clenched with recognition even before her mind could place the faces. A woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, a younger man with Kieran's amber gaze, others she remembered in fragments, smiles, conversations, moments of acceptance and belonging. "They remember me," Elena said, suddenly terrified. "They've mourned you for 3 years," Kieran said gently. "Seeing you again, it's going to be overwhelming for everyone." The woman with silver hair reached them first, and Elena's memory supplied a name. Margaret, Kieran's second in command, and the closest thing to a mother figure Eleanor had known since losing her parents. "Elena," Margaret's voice broke on her name. "My dear girl, we thought we'd lost you forever." Eleanor found herself pulled into a fierce embrace that smelled like lavender and home-baked bread. The scent triggered a flood of memories, Margaret teaching her pack protocols, helping her choose her engagement dress, staying by her bedside during those terrible 2 weeks. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered against Margaret's shoulder. "I'm so sorry I left." "Shush, child, you're home now. That's all that matters." The next hours passed in a blur of reunions and reintroductions. Pack members she couldn't quite remember treated her with reverent joy, sharing stories of her time here that helped piece together the life she'd lost. Elena saw herself through their eyes, beloved, cherished, someone who had brought laughter and light to their community. "You organised a literacy programme for the Pack children," said Maria, a young mother whose face Eleanor remembered dimly. "My daughter still asks when Miss Elena is coming back to read stories." "You helped design the new playground," added Thomas, Kieran's younger brother. "You said every child deserved a place to feel free and wild." Each story was a gift, another piece of herself restored. But as the afternoon wore on, Eleanor began to notice the subtle tensions. Whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. Glances between pack members that carried weight she couldn't interpret. That evening, as Eleanor sat with Kieran on the porch of what had once been their shared home, she finally voiced her concerns. "Some of them are afraid of me," she said quietly. Kieran's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not afraid, confused. Your disappearance left questions that we never had answers for." "What kind of questions?" Before Kieran could respond, the sound of vehicles approaching made them both tense. Elena watched as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the main house, disgorging a group of stern-faced strangers who moved with the careful precision of trained fighters. "Who are they?" Elena asked, but the ice in Kieran's expression already told her this wasn't a social call. Margaret appeared at the porch steps, her face grim. "Alpha, they're here about Elena. They have documentation." Elena's blood went cold. "Documentation about what?" The lead figure from the SUV stepped forward, a tall woman with platinum blonde hair and cold blue eyes that Elena recognised with sickening clarity. "Vivian!" "Hello, cousin," Vivian said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "I'm so glad to see you're alive. There are so many people who want to speak with you." Kieran moved to shield Elena, his presence radiating lethal threat. "You're not welcome here, Vivian. Leave my territory now." "Actually, I'm here on official business." Vivian held up an official-looking document. "Elena Nightshade is wanted for questioning in the murder of Alpha Marcus Thornfield and his mate. She disappeared from the scene 3 years ago, and now that she's been found..." The words hit Elena like physical blows. Murder? Alpha Marcus? The name meant nothing to her, but the accusation sent terror shooting through her veins. "That's impossible," Kieran snarled, but Eleanor heard something in his voice, a hesitation that made her stomach drop. "Is it?" Vivian's smile was cruel. Elena was found covered in blood the night she disappeared, blood that wasn't entirely her own. Alpha Marcus and his mate were found dead in their territory 2 days later, killed by someone with Elena's particular talents. Elena's hands began to shake. The night of the attack was still mostly fragments, pain, terror, the taste of blood in her mouth. What if there were pieces she hadn't remembered yet? What if she had done something terrible? "Elena didn't kill anyone," Margaret said fiercely, but Elena barely heard her over the roaring in her ears. "The evidence suggests otherwise." One of Vivian's companions stepped forward, a man wearing the insignia of the Northern Territories Council. "Miss Nightshade, you're wanted for questioning. If you cooperate, we can handle this quietly." "She's not going anywhere." Kieran's voice carried the full weight of his authority, but Elena saw doubt flicker in some of the pack members' eyes. She remembered the whispered conversations, the careful glances. They'd wondered too. They'd questioned whether she was capable of something so terrible. What if she did it? The voice came from behind Elena. James, one of the younger pack members. What if that's why she ran? What if she remembered and couldn't live with what she'd done? Elena flinched as if he'd struck her. The fragile confidence she'd been rebuilding crumbled in an instant. "James?" Kieran's voice was deadly quiet, but the damage was done. Elena stood abruptly, backing away from all of them. Maybe he's right. Maybe I did do something horrible and blocked it out. How would I know? How would any of us know? Elena, no. Kieran reached for her, but she stepped beyond his grasp. "I don't remember everything from that night," she said, her voice breaking. "There are still gaps, still pieces missing. What if—" A new memory surfaced suddenly, sharp and terrible, her hands covered in blood, the metallic taste in her mouth. Standing over bodies that weren't moving, weren't breathing. Elena gasped, stumbling backward. Oh God, what if I did? Eleanor! Kieran's shout seemed to come from very far away. But suddenly, another memory crashed over her, clearer, more complete. The bodies hadn't been dead, they'd been breathing, injured but alive. She'd been trying to help them, to heal them with the limited medical training Margaret had taught her, and then she remembered who had been there with her, who had actually killed Alpha Marcus and his mate while Elena tried desperately to save them. Elena straightened slowly, her eyes finding Vivian's across the gathering crowd. You killed them. Vivian's composed mask slipped for just a moment. Don't be ridiculous. You killed Alpha Marcus and Luna Catherine while I was trying to save them. Elena's voice grew stronger as the full memory crystallized. They'd found out about your plan to kill me. Marcus was going to expose you to the council, so you murdered them and framed me. Prove it, Vivian snarled, dropping all pretense of sweetness. Elena looked around at the faces surrounding her, some skeptical, some afraid, some fiercely loyal. And in the centre of them all, Kieran, his amber eyes blazing with absolute faith in her innocence. I can't prove it, Elena said quietly, but I remember now. I remember trying to save them. I remember you standing over their bodies with bloody claws. I remember you telling me that no one would ever believe the pack outcast over the Alpha's daughter. Elena turned to face the council representative. 3 years ago, I was found covered in blood because I tried to save 2 people my cousin murdered in cold blood. She framed me for their deaths, then hired rogues to kill me when she realized I might expose her. The attack that gave me amnesia was meant to be my execution. Those are serious accusations, the council representative said carefully. With no proof, Vivian added smoothly. Just the desperate words of a woman trying to avoid justice. Eleanor felt the weight of judgment pressing down on her. Without proof, it was her word against Vivian's, and Vivian was right. Who would believe the pack outcast over an Alpha's daughter? But then Kieran stepped up beside her, his presence warm and solid at her back. I believe her, he said simply. Elena has never lied to me. Not once in all the time I've known her. If she says Vivian is the murderer, then Vivian is the murderer. That's not evidence, the council representative protested. Then investigate properly, Margaret snapped. Don't just accept the word of a woman who was exiled for attempted murder. Eleanor looked around at the pack members. Her pack, she realised. People who had loved her, mourned her, welcomed her home. People who were now choosing to stand with her despite their doubts. We need time, Elena said to the council representative. Time to recover the rest of my memories, time to gather evidence. You've waited 3 years for answers. Surely you can wait a little longer to make sure you have the right person. The man looked between Elena and Vivian, clearly weighing his options. 1 week, he said finally. You have 1 week to present evidence, or Miss Nightshade comes with us for formal questioning. As the council vehicles departed, Vivian lingered just long enough to whisper to Elena, Enjoy your week, cousin. It's the last freedom you'll ever have. But as Elena watched her leave, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years, the absolute certainty that she wasn't facing this alone. Kieran's arms came around her from behind, solid and protective. We'll figure this out, he murmured against her hair. I promise you, we'll prove your innocence. Eleanor leaned back against his chest, letting his strength steady her. What if we can't? What if there's no proof after all this time? Then we'll face whatever comes together. Kieran turned her to face him, his amber eyes fierce with love and determination. I won't lose you again, Elena. Not to Vivian, not to the council, not to anything. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. Elena searched his face and saw only truth, only unwavering faith in her innocence, only love strong enough to weather any storm. For the first time since Vivian's arrival, Elena felt something like hope. "Together," she whispered, and knew she meant it completely. Whatever came next, they would face it as mates, as partners, as two people who had already survived the worst and chosen to find their way back to each other. The golden thread in Elena's chest sang with renewed strength. She was scared, but she was no longer alone, and that made all the difference in the world. The week passed like a countdown to execution. Elena spent the days immersed in recovered memories, working with Margaret to piece together every detail of that terrible night. They found fragments, witness accounts, timeline discrepancies, small pieces of evidence that Vivian had overlooked in her haste to frame Eleanor and flee, but nothing concrete enough to satisfy a council tribunal. On the morning of the 7th day, the great hall of the Blackthorn main house filled with representatives from every major pack in the Northern Territories. The council had decided to hold Elena's hearing publicly, and the sight of so many powerful alphas gathered in judgment made Elena's hands shake. "You don't have to face this alone," Kieran murmured against her ear as they stood at the entrance to the hall. "Just remember, you're not the frightened girl who ran 3 years ago. You're my mate, my Luna, my equal." Elena squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering faith. "What if it's not enough? Then we'll face whatever comes next together." His amber eyes blazed with fierce love. "But I have faith in the truth, Elena, and I have faith in you." The council representative, Alpha Morrison from the Eastern Territories, called the assembly to order. Elena's breath caught as she recognized his name. Morrison, the same last name she'd been using. Even in her amnesia, some part of her had remembered this man's kindness. "We are here," Alpha Morrison announced, "to determine the truth about the murders of Alpha Marcus Thornfield and Luna Catherine Thornfield 3 years ago. Elena Nightshade stands accused. Vivian Nightshade brings the accusations." Vivian rose from her seat near the front, and Eleanor was struck by how different her cousin looked. Gone was the polished beauty Eleanor remembered. 3 years of exile had left Vivian harder, more desperate, her blonde hair lank and her expensive clothes slightly shabby. "Honoured Alphas," Vivian began, her voice carrying the smooth confidence of a practised liar. 3 years ago, my cousin Elena murdered Alpha Marcus and Luna Catherine in cold blood. She was found at the scene, covered in their blood, and she fled before she could be properly questioned. Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. Eleanor felt the weight of their judgment like a physical pressure. "She disappeared," Vivian continued, "leaving behind only questions and grief. Now that she's been found, justice demands answers." Alpha Morrison nodded gravely. "Eleanor Nightshade, how do you answer these charges?" Eleanor stood, her legs steady despite the terror in her chest. "I am innocent, Alpha Morrison. I did not murder Alpha Marcus or Luna Catherine. I tried to save them." "Convenient," Vivian sneered. "She claims amnesia prevents her from remembering clearly. How do we know she's not simply lying?" "Because," a new voice cut across the hall, "I have evidence that proves Elena's innocence." Every head turned toward the speaker, a man Elena didn't recognize, tall and distinguished with silver hair and kind eyes. But Vivian went pale as death at the sight of him. "Alpha Thornfield," Alpha Morrison said with surprise. "I wasn't aware you were attending." Eleanor's heart stopped. Thornfield, as in Marcus Thornfield's family. The silver-haired man stepped forward. "I am David Thornfield, Marcus's brother, and I bring evidence that will clear Eleanor Nightshade's name." Vivian shot to her feet. "That's impossible. There is no evidence." "Isn't there?" David Thornfield's voice was calm, but his eyes held the cold promise of justice. "My brother was many things, but he was also careful. He kept detailed records of all his dealings, including his investigation into a plot against the Blackthorn pack." Elena's breath caught. An investigation? Marcus discovered, David continued, that someone was planning to assassinate Elena Nightshade during her engagement celebration. He also discovered that this same person had been embezzling funds from several PAC accounts and selling information to rogue groups. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Alpha Morrison banged his gavel for order. Marcus arranged to meet the conspirator the night of the Blackthorn celebration, David said. He intended to confront them and demand they surrender themselves to PAC justice. Instead, they murdered him and his mate to keep their secrets safe. Lies! Vivian's composure cracked completely. He has no proof. My brother recorded everything. David held up a small digital device, including his final conversation with you, Vivian Nightshade. The silence in the hall was deafening. David activated the device, and Marcus Thornfield's voice filled the room. Vivian, I know about the embezzlement, I know about the rogues, and I know you're planning to kill Elena tonight. This ends now. Vivian's voice answered, cold and vicious. You always were too noble for your own good, Marcus. Catherine too. Don't worry, I'll make sure Elena joins you shortly. The sounds that followed were brief and brutal. Snarls, a woman's scream cut short, then silence. Elena's legs gave out. Kieran caught her before she could fall, his arms strong and steady around her. My brother managed to trigger an emergency beacon before he died, David said quietly. Eleanor found them still clinging to life. She tried to save them, just as she claimed. The blood on her clothes was from her efforts to heal their wounds, not from killing them. Eleanor looked up at the faces surrounding her, no longer judgmental, but horrified by the truth they'd just heard. Marcus lived long enough to tell me what happened, David continued. Vivian attacked Elena immediately after murdering my brother and his mate. Elena barely escaped with her life, and the trauma of the attack caused her amnesia. Alpha Morrison's voice was heavy with authority. Vivian Nightshade, you stand accused of the murder of Alpha Marcus Thornfield and Luna Catherine Thornfield, the attempted murder of Elena Nightshade, embezzlement and conspiracy with rogue elements. How do you answer? But Vivian was already moving, shifting into her wolf form and lunging toward the nearest exit. She made it 3 steps before Kieran's power slammed her to the ground, his alpha command freezing her in place. You will answer for your crimes, Kieran said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. In human form. Vivian shifted back, her face twisted with rage and desperation. This proves nothing. You can't prove I hired those rogues to kill her. Actually, Elena said, standing on shaking legs, I remember now, all of it. She turned to address the assembled alphas, her voice growing stronger with each word. Vivian didn't just hire rogues to kill me. She promised them access to Blackthorn territory if they succeeded. She was going to let them establish a base of operations right in the heart of our lands. The reaction was immediate and violent. Several alphas rose to their feet, their faces dark with fury. Allowing rogues into PAC territory was one of the most serious crimes an alpha could commit. She planned to frame my death as a rogue attack, Elena continued, then step in as Kieran's comforting presence. She thought grief would make him vulnerable to her manipulation. Enough, Vivian snarled. I deserved to be Luna. I was born to it. You were nothing, a stray, a nobody who didn't even belong to a PAC. Elena felt Kieran's hand warm and steady at the small of her back, giving her strength. You're right, Elena said quietly. I was a stray, I was nobody, but Kieran saw something in me worth loving, worth protecting, worth choosing, and you couldn't stand that someone you considered beneath you had found the belonging you thought you deserved. She stepped forward, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena felt the full power of who she'd been. Not just a victim, but a survivor, a fighter, a woman worthy of love. The difference between us, Vivian, is that I never had to destroy someone else to prove my worth. Kieran chose me because of who I am, not because I eliminated the competition. The hall fell silent except for Vivian's ragged breathing. Alpha Morrison's voice cut through the tension. The evidence is clear. Vivian Nightshade, you are found guilty of murder, attempted murder, conspiracy, and treason against pack law. The sentence is death." "No!" Vivian's scream echoed through the hall. "This isn't over. Even if you kill me, there are others who know Elena doesn't deserve." Kieran moved with lethal speed, his hand closing around Vivian's throat. "You will not speak my mate's name again," he said quietly. "Ever." But instead of killing her, Kieran stepped back. "The sentence will be carried out by the wronged parties," Alpha Morrison announced. "David Thornfield, as Alpha Marcus's brother, you have first right of vengeance." David stepped forward, but instead of shifting to his wolf form, he looked at Elena. "What do you want, Elena Nightshade? She destroyed your life, stole your memories, nearly killed you twice. What justice do you seek?" Elena looked at Vivian, this woman who had been family, who had destroyed everything out of jealousy and entitlement. Part of her wanted vengeance, wanted Vivian to suffer as she had suffered. But Elena was not the broken girl who had fled in terror 3 years ago. "I want her to live," Elena said quietly. "Not as an act of mercy, but as a consequence. I want her to live knowing that everything she tried to destroy is stronger than ever. I want her to live with the knowledge that she gave up everything for nothing." She turned to Alpha Morrison. "Permanent exile, strip her of pack rights, of territory access, of all protections under pack law. Let her live as a true rogue, alone, unwanted, with nothing but her choices to keep her company." Alpha Morrison nodded approvingly. "It is decided. Vivian Nightshade, you are cast out. You are no one's daughter, no one's packmate, no one's kin. You are nothing, and you will remain nothing until the day you die." The ritual words hit Vivian like physical blows. She crumpled to the ground, the full weight of her sentence crushing her. As guards led her away, Vivian looked back once. "This isn't over," she mouthed silently to Elena. But Elena was no longer afraid. Kieran stepped forward, his voice carrying throughout the hall. "Before this assembly disperses, I have an announcement to make." He took Elena's hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers. 3 years ago, Elena Nightshade was stolen from me on the night I was supposed to claim her as my mate. Today, I reclaim what was always mine." He turned to face her, his amber eyes blazing with love and determination. "Elena Nightshade, before these witnesses, I claim you as my mate, my Luna, my equal in all things. Will you have me?" Elena's heart soared as she looked into the face of the man who had never stopped believing in her, never stopped searching for her, never stopped loving her. "Yes," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "always yes." When Kieran kissed her, the assembled alphas erupted in approval, but Eleanor barely heard them over the singing of her own heart. She was home, she was claimed, she was exactly where she belonged. The golden thread in her chest blazed with joy, and Eleanor knew that no force on earth would ever separate them again. 3 months later, Eleanor stood in the gardens behind the main house, watching the sun set over the valley that had become her home once again. The golden light caught the simple band on her left ring finger, not the elaborate engagement ring from before, but something new, chosen together for the life they were building now. "The sanctuary is ready for its first residents," Margaret said, approaching with a tablet full of applications. 23 people seeking help with trauma-related memory issues. The therapy centre you designed is already being requested by 3 other pack territories. Elena smiled, taking the tablet to review the files. Each application represented someone like her, a survivor trying to piece together a shattered life, looking for a safe place to heal. The Nightshade Sanctuary had been her idea, built on land Kieran had gifted her as a mating present. A place where those who had lost pieces of themselves could find their way back to wholeness. "This one," Elena said, pointing to a file. "Maria Santos, 18 years old. She reminds me of myself at that age." "Orphaned by rogues, memory gaps from the trauma," Margaret read. "She's been living rough for 2 years." "She'll be our first." Elena handed back the tablet. Make sure she knows she's safe here, that no one will push her to remember before she's ready. Margaret's smile was warm with pride. You've found your calling, haven't you? Elena looked out over the sanctuary buildings, therapy centre, residence hall, recreational facilities, all designed with healing in mind. I spent 3 years running from my past. Now I get to help others find the courage to face theirs. Elena! The voice belonged to Sarah, one of the pack children Elena had grown close to. Kieran says dinner's ready and he made your favourite. Elena laughed, ruffling Sarah's dark hair as she passed. Tell him I'll be right there. The main house bustled with evening activity, pack members sharing meals, children playing, the comfortable chaos of family life. Eleanor had worried at first about fitting back into pack dynamics, but her role as Luna had evolved naturally, shaped by her experiences rather than forced into traditional moulds. She found Kieran in the kitchen, stirring something that smelled like heaven. His sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly mussed from cooking, and the sight of him still made her heart skip beats. "Smells like home," Elena said, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "Beef stew with those little potatoes you love," Kieran confirmed, leaning back into her embrace. "Margaret said the sanctuary paperwork went through. We're officially open for business." 23 applications on the first day. Eleanor pressed her face against his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. "I never expected so many people to need this kind of help." "Trauma changes you," Kieran said quietly. "But it doesn't have to define you. You're proof of that." They ate dinner surrounded by pack family, Margaret sharing stories from her day, Thomas arguing with his mate about baby names, the children chattering about school projects. Elena marvelled at how easily she'd slipped back into the rhythm of communal life, how natural it felt to be part of something larger than herself. After dinner, she and Kieran walked their favourite path through the woods, the same trail where she'd once collapsed from exhaustion and fear. Now it represented something else entirely, the beginning of their story, the place where love had first taken root. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked, as they reached the clearing where Kieran had first found her. "The 3 years we lost? Everything that could have been different?" Kieran stopped walking, turning to face her in the moonlight. "Do you?" Elena considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain. I regret that Vivian's jealousy cost so many people so much, but the woman who ran away 3 years ago, she wasn't ready for what we have now." "What do you mean?" "I was so desperate to belong somewhere that I would have lost myself trying to be what I thought you needed." Elena took his hands, marvelling at how perfectly they fit together. "The woman I am now knows her own worth, knows she doesn't have to choose between independence and partnership." Kieran's smile was radiant. "I fell in love with your strength, Elena. I'm glad you found your way back to it." "I had help." She stood on her toes to kiss him, soft and sweet under the stars. "From a patient alpha who never stopped believing I was worth waiting for." They made their way back to their house, not the one Elena had shared with Kieran before, but a new home they'd chosen together. Smaller than the main pack house, but filled with windows and light, perfect for 2 people learning to build a life as equals. In their bedroom, Elena caught sight of herself in the mirror and stopped. The woman looking back at her was nothing like the frightened librarian who'd hidden in that mountain town. This woman stood tall, confident, her eyes bright with purpose and love. "I remember the first time I saw myself in a mirror after the attack," Elena said softly. "I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I felt like I'd become someone else entirely." Kieran appeared behind her in the reflection, his hands settling on her shoulders. "And now?" "Now I see who I was always meant to become." Eleanor leaned back against his chest. The scared girl, the hidden librarian, the Lunar Queen. They're all me, all part of the story. "A story that's still being written," Kieran murmured against her hair. Elena turned in his arms, her heart full to overflowing with love for this man who'd searched the world to find her, who'd waited while she found herself again. "Tell me something," she said, tracing patterns on his chest. "When you were looking for me all those years, did you ever imagine it would end like this?" "Better than this," Kieran admitted. "In my dreams you remembered everything immediately, and we picked up exactly where we left off. I thought I just wanted my Elena back." "And now?" "Now I know I got something better. I got all of you, past, present and future. The woman you were, the woman you became, and the woman you're still becoming." Elena's eyes filled with happy tears. "I love you. Not because some supernatural bond says I should, not because you saved me or found me or waited for me. I love you because you make me want to be brave." "You are brave," Kieran said fiercely. "You're the bravest person I know." As they settled into bed together, Eleanor felt the golden thread in her chest sing with contentment. Outside their window, the Pack territory sprawled in peaceful darkness, protected and prosperous. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: sanctuary residents to welcome, Pack business to manage, a life to build one day at a time. But tonight, Eleanor was exactly where she belonged. "Kieran?" she said softly into the darkness. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself." "Elena." His voice was warm with love and absolute certainty. "I will never give up on you. In this life or any other, I will always find my way back to you." Elena smiled in the darkness, her hand finding his over her heart. "And I'll be waiting. However long it takes, wherever I am, I'll be waiting too." As sleep claimed her, Elena's last thought was of Maria Santos, the 18-year-old who would arrive at the sanctuary next week. Another lost soul looking for a place to heal, to grow, to discover that being broken didn't mean being worthless. Elena had learned the truth that would guide her work for years to come. Sometimes you had to lose yourself completely to discover who you were meant to be. Sometimes the best love stories weren't about finding someone new, but about choosing to see someone familiar with fresh eyes. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got the chance to help others write their own stories of healing, hope, and second chances. Elena Nightshade had found her calling, her mate, and her home. She was no longer running from her past or hiding from her future. She was exactly who she was meant to be: a survivor, a healer, a Luna who had learned that true strength came not from never falling, but from choosing to rise every single time. The golden thread in her chest pulsed once, warm and content, before settling into the steady rhythm of a heart at peace. Home at last. Where are you listening from? I'd love to hear your thoughts about Elena's journey in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of second chances and finding strength after trauma, please subscribe. It's free and helps me bring these stories to more people who might need to hear them. Thank you for joining me in Elena and Kieran's world. Until next time, remember that your story isn't over, no matter how lost you might feel right now. Sometimes the best chapters are still waiting to be written.